It's Mental Health Awareness Month. Dominique Battle is a board-certified counselor and trauma specialist, and she joins us now with the importance of taking time to focus on yourself. Dominique, thank you so much for joining us on BNC Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's jump right in because we got a lot of questions for you. Let's start with why it's important for people to use this month to sort of do like a mental health check-in, and how can that help people in the long run?
Well, this month is the awareness month, and it's important to be able to check in with your mental health because we experience so many things in our days. You know, we get text messages, we get phone calls, we get emails, and we don't often pay attention to how that affects us. But over time, it tends to sit, and all these symptoms and problems start to arise. And so we want to try to help people not get into that crisis mode, to kind of catch it before it gets to the worst part of the mental health, to see if we can kind of stave off some of those numbers that we see climbing and increasing.
But a lot of times people only think, hey, I need to see a therapist. Besides that, what are some other things people can do to really take charge of their mental health?
They can journal, they can recite affirmations, which is always a good thing to do. There's a lot of different apps on our phones because everybody's on their phone nowadays. So there are apps to be able to check in with yourself, check in with your emotions, to see how you're feeling on the inside. YouTube has a lot of great resources for meditation, has a lot of great resources just to be able to read up on things. TikTok is booming now when it comes to mental health. So there are always people to follow, things to see, things to learn. So there are a lot of different ways that people can take charge before they go to see a counselor.
Now, you mentioned journaling. I know that's a big thing a lot of people promote, as well as writing down affirmations. So talk to us about what people can really get out of those practices.
Well, journaling and writing down affirmations is a way to intentionally be able to focus on how your body is feeling, because oftentimes we'll find that our shoulders are tense or our jaw is locked, or we feel anger or we feel tightness and we don't really pay attention to it, or we don't know where it comes from. So being able to sit down with a pen and paper, or being able to read words that kind of speak to how you feel, lets you have that intentional time to see what's happening in your body, to notice, if there are symptoms there that you hadn't been paying attention to, because life is busy and we don't always see it. And so being able to carve out that time in your day kind of helps you to just kind of focus on it a little bit better.
And once you get that focus down and you're ready to see a therapist, we know they play an important role in the mental health process. So at what point should a person consider incorporating a therapist into their life? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I can handle it. I don't need a therapist. I'll do it myself. But at what point should they see one?
When they find out that they can't do it themselves, honestly. At any time really is a good time to have a therapist, to see a therapist. But when they start to feel the overwhelm, or when they start to feel like everything is out of control and they can't find any kind of grounding, then having that other party to kind of help them unravel the ball of yarn, or the ball of chaos is how some of us tend to call it, kind of helps them to see it more clearly, to see what steps need to be taken, which things to prioritize and which things not to prioritize. So it's not that we tell people what to do, or that we kind of show them or force them to do what we want them to do, but we just kind of open up the space a little bit so that they can see everything clearly enough to make the decisions.
So I guess also, a lot of people think, oh, things aren't that bad, I don't need to see a therapist. Is it only for negative issues, or when your life is like chaotic, that you should see a therapist?
No, you can see a therapist at any point for crisis issues, for maintenance, for life transitions. So it can be the good life transitions, like having a baby or getting married, and you feel that anxiety or that nervousness or that overwhelm. In addition to crisis, you want to be able to have the space to be able to make the decisions, have the space to take in the skills and take in the techniques. And oftentimes when you're in that crisis mode, every time you see a therapist, your body is just trying to stabilize and to find a safe place that you can't really take in all the things, because it's just seeking comfort. And so if you're able to see a therapist when things aren't going so bad, then you can listen better, you can retain skills better, so that when crisis happens, you don't even have to think about it. You just pull from your toolbox and then keep going.
I like that. You need a little life toolbox, right? Well, COVID-19 sure did throw a curveball at our toolbox, if you will, and it's impacted a lot of people. Even now that the pandemic is over or winding down, it still could be possibly impacting people, right?
Yes, 100%. One of the things that I'm finding the most is that people are experiencing anxiety where they have never experienced anxiety before. They're experiencing depression or social anxiety where they are no longer able to be in big crowds or go to the grocery store. And so where some people who have experienced that before, they already have their toolbox, they have their skills, the individuals who have never been able to experience it but have had to because of this collective trauma are really struggling to understand what anxiety is, what the symptoms look like, how to pay attention to them. And that's where, Mental Health Awareness Month comes into play, because then it can educate them on what anxiety looks like to see if it resonates with the things that they feel.
And speaking of anxiety, we can't forget about our kids. I am a father of 3 kids, and sometimes I don't think parents can really recognize what that looks like and the signs that they should be looking for. So what should they be looking for? How do you address it? What should you do to help your kid?
In children, it often shows up as an inability to concentrate where they were able to concentrate before. They may start to get more angry or irritable. They may stop eating the way that they used to. They may have issues sleeping where they used to sleep okay. They may be extra clingy or always crying or tense or constantly worrying about certain things. So whenever the kids start to display those particular symptoms where it hadn't been there before, then that's when you want to kind of pay attention. And the first thing to do is just to talk to them. Kids can often tell you how they feel. They may not be able to use the vernacular that we use because the vocabulary isn't as extensive, but they can, tell you what they feel in their body. They can tell you if it feels tight, or if they don't know why they feel these things, but it happens so often. And so just those little bit of tidbits can kind of help them understand what it is, help you to see whether or not it's time to call somebody or if it's something that you guys can figure out at home. But talking to them, regardless of the age, kind of always helps because they can tell you how they feel. And then you can meet them in the middle and be able to express that to a doctor or a therapist.
Well, sometimes it's hard when the parents themselves don't believe in therapy or mental health awareness. Talk to us about the stigma that exists in the Black community, especially when it comes to mental health. And are we seeing an increase? Are people becoming more comfortable with it? What are the numbers showing?
I think people are becoming more comfortable with it. They talk about it more in their circles. They talk about it more with their friends. 95% of my caseload is Black women and men. So they are coming into therapy. They are seeking the help that they need to seek. And so I think that stigma is starting to break down. I think we still have a long ways to go, but people are starting to pay attention when they aren't feeling well, and they are starting to pay attention when they need to seek help outside of their friends or seek help outside of their family. There are still the ones who struggle with it. And so in those cases, it's helpful just to talk about feelings, just to talk about, what they feel in their body, be able to resonate with another person's experience versus using the vernacular that we use, because we hear depression or we hear anxiety. And that's when we stop listening. But it's just sticking to the symptoms. Do you feel sad? Do you feel, anxious? Do you feel irritable, like angry a whole lot? Are you upset every day? Being able to use that terminology that's everyday language for us is easier to help identify that in our friends and our family and to help them see it as well.
Okay, so what's one thing maybe you would say to someone who they're interested in exploring their mental health, but they're finding it hard or they don't know where to start?
Well, with therapists, I know a lot of people don't know this, but you can interview therapists. So being able to get a free consultation with people that you may see, their websites or read their verbiage in their description, and just sit down with them, have a conversation, let them know what you need, let them know what you like, let them know what your barriers are. And oftentimes you'll get somebody on the phone that makes you feel comfortable. You get somebody on the phone that makes you feel like you can talk to them about the things that you struggle with. And that way you can play the field a little bit to see how you want to do this. And oftentimes I found that helps them the most when they can either sit in front of a therapist for a free consultation and, kind of feel the vibes and make sure that they're comfortable in that space and that it feels like they can really share in that space.
Well, what if someone wants to share with you? How can we learn more about what you do in your work?
Well, my website is orlandocounselingandwellness.com. They can find me on Instagram at Dominique Battle _. And they can always DM me with questions. I'm always open to answering whatever questions I can.
All right, love that. Dominique Battle, board certified counselor and trauma specialist. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for having me.